the stream, and welcome once again to a fresh take. I am your host, Dan Freeman, aka the Danny Fresh, as you can find me on the Twitters and the TikTok. And hey, you 700 or so TikTok followers of mine, get over here and subscribe to this channel, you silly gooses. If you're seeing this live, or you're seeing it on the rewind, hit the subscribe, the like, all that kind of good stuff. Good show tonight. Couple little quick preamble. We're going to get in it. We're going to be talking with our friend Josh Moise, fellow collector and comic lover, about how to approach collecting comics in the bear market that we're experiencing right now. So we're going to talk kind of like long-term and short-term in that approach. So just with the channel, coming this week, I still have shows coming out with some content about comics I'm picking up on New Comic Book Day, and a little rant, for lack of a better word, on comic book gatekeeping and what I think we are shooting ourselves in the foot with in that area. Robert Kessler is going to return back, and we are going to talk, kind of the all things of the state of the TV and film landscape with comics and just, content in general. And the idea that really we're entering, we were in sort of a scarcity mindset, and we really have an abundance of content, and we need to kind of maybe switch the way we're approaching some of this content, and holding everything through the same lens, as if we're not getting kind of flooded with content that may or may not be made for you, and may or may not be interesting to you, and maybe that's just okay. I've been teasing a partnership and a couple big guests, and I am getting so close at announcing. I think that will happen this week. I'll be able to tell you about all that. But I think you guys are going to be really excited about it. All that said, hey, let's get into the topic. Bring in Josh. Hello, sir.
Hi, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining me. So listen, it is not unique to the comic book market right now. Obviously, we'll get into the global aspects of it later, but regardless of where you've been collecting, investing, putting monies, whatever, just about everything is down. And it's not like this doesn't appear to be any kind of little dip. It feels like there's certainly a shift. And, big caveats to everybody watching. The things we talk about tonight, look, everyone's budgets are different. Everybody's needs for themselves, for their family are different. So that caveat, this is not financial advice, certainly. And also, it's rare, Josh, but we've been known to be wrong sometimes, sometimes. So we're just going to give you our advice. Hey, Ethan, thanks for joining. We're going to give you our advice and our take on how to approach this bear market with collecting. So with that in mind, I think there's some critical distinctions we need to make right at the top. Okay. One is the difference between collecting, investing, and speculating. These are terms we all know as comic collectors, but to be really clear, collecting is that thing unto itself, right? It's you're putting together your personal collection and how you want to pursue acquiring your comics. Speculating is essentially assuming that and taking a risk on a certain book, storyline, trend, character getting hot, accelerating based on some things changing, and kind of pursuing that rapid return. And then there's the investment books, which are kind of long-term acquisitions that you hope pay kind of long arc dividends. So is there anything you want to add to those sort of three descriptions for the sake of setting up the conversation?
I think what you said is absolutely true and great. Makes sense to me.
Fantastic. So with that in mind, what are some trends that you're noticing? We can talk in the macro, but specific to comics right now.
Well, there's a few things. Obviously, the prices are going down. I think that's the most obvious one. And then in the spec market, the amount of turnaround time that you might have to flip that book has shrunk considerably in my mind.
Yes.
You used to be able to get a book, hold on to it for a month, couple months, you know, and flip it for a really healthy return. Now you might buy that book and need to flip it almost immediately,
Hmm.
um, or much faster than you had at least. So I think that's the biggest thing, because the market is climbing so quickly on these spec books and then dropping so precipitously right after that.
Hmm.
They don't hold their long-term value that they did pre-pandemic.
Hmm. And I think what's interesting is, and there's a timeline issue here. I think, at least in my experience, and I don't know if you've had this exact same timeline, Josh, but I've certainly dipped in and out of collecting over the years.
Mm,
But I would say, the pandemic hypercharged things, but we were seeing that kind of rapid escalation in like 2016, 2017. And when I first kind of caught my attention that we were dealing with a different kind of market than I remember when I last was like aggressively collecting, really like 2014, 2015, right? And
mhm.
it was jumps and jumps and then boom. And I sort of demarcate kind of when it's really the Ultimate Fallout 4 is a little bit my like line of when I think I was like, wait, it's how much? Because maybe I picked it up thinking like, oh, I think that book might double, and it like 10x'd or whatever,
Right.
and it kind of opened up a new era, and that went through. Um, what I'm finding in the most recent is that um I'm finding it very hard. There doesn't seem to be, for my taste, a lot of rhyme or reason on the spec stuff. What is getting the media pop and what isn't? Like, yeah, the turnarounds are shorter. And I think part of that is because there's just less discretionary money out there. So people are less willing to kind of like hold it and think it'll bump to the next level, right? People are trying to
Right.
dump out, as quickly as they
Yep.
can. Um, but also like really like look at the Miss Marvel show, which has been very well received, highly rated. Whether it's for you or not, it's a different story. It's a consensus hit. People are really enjoying it. I enjoyed it. My kids enjoyed it. Um, I've had some Miss Marvel books that I've had for years now in anticipation of this that haven't really moved the needle all that much, and I'm thinking, okay, well, do I take that little right now, or am I holding on? And that's we'll get into the more specifics of individual books
Right.
later. But
Well, I
yeah,
think
go ahead.
that's the saturation point that it sounds like you and Robert maybe are going to be talking about later in the week
Hmm.
with the content, is that it's the TV shows that Marvel's putting out and the movies. In some weird ways, it feels much more like comic book collecting than watching media at this point. There's
Mm,
so much you can choose to watch. Moon Knight, and maybe there's, I start thinking about it, is that a good episode slash issue,
hmm.
right? It's
Hmm.
not. So you start thinking about it in a much more finite, in a different relationship to it, because it's not an event and it's not driving people into the theaters because it's on your screens in the same way. So even if it's everyone's watching it at home, it doesn't have the same zeitgeist, which is going to lift up the
Hmm.
value of a book um, consistently. I mean, I think we
Hmm.
could look at some, I think Kang. Let's talk
Right.
Kang just for a second, right?
Right.
Kang, I think, is an exception, but I think Kang people are specking, investing, collecting. People collect Kang. He's a great character, and
Sure.
then you're specking on the fact that this is a character who is the next big bad or
Right.
one of the next big bads. So
And let's be honest, we're not really. I mean, Marvel's told us he is. Like, it's not like. I mean, they're speculating. The question, what you're really specking on, is how successfully does that play out? Does it catch on
fair,
with the public? Right, but I mean, we know he's going to be around for many films. We know he's going to be involved in an outsized role. The question is, Thanos captured the nation or whatever, captured the world, right, with his villainy.
right?
Does Kang resonate that same
Right, and that in some way goes back to the original comic books, right?
way? Mm-hmm.
Thanos and Kang. You know, if we sat here and did a top 10 Marvel villain list, we might hit both of those guys pretty
Right.
quickly
Right.
on that kind of thing. So I think that's changing the way people are thinking about buying comic books. The shows are changing the way people are thinking
Hmm.
about buying comic books and then flipping them. So when you get something like the what was it, the
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 Thunderbolts.
Thunderbolts are the most recent,
Right.
you
But
know.
what's interesting with the Thunderbolt? Sorry,
No, go for it, man.
if I take this in a different direction, let me know. But like
Yeah.
that's actually a good example. If you were asking me to bet on the longevity and value of Miss Marvel as a key, as Kamala Khan, as a key part of the Marvel landscape, 5, 10, 20 years, or the Thunderbolts, to me, there's a non-starter where, and yet the Thunderbolt books are zipping up. And maybe it's because we know less in a way. Maybe because we don't actually know what that looks like, so people feel like there's more there. But I am earnestly perplexed.
Well, it also relates to the demographic of the people buying the books. Are there more people interested in villains or in Ms. Marvel?
Mhm.
And as great as the Ms. Marvel character is, she might not have the mystery or the
Mm.
demographic of a fan base that, ooh, Baron Zemo, we kind of like him,
Mhm.
or all these other, what other villains have we seen that weren't Thunderbolts in the books, but might now be able to be recycled from the MCU.
Right. So that's interesting. So I think that speaks to a point that, and maybe we differ on this a little bit in our takes. So I think my sense is I have a little bit more affection for the newer heroes than you do, but maybe I'm wrong about it, but I think that's accurate. Which, hey, everyone can like what they like. It's fine here at this channel. But you know, I wonder if this goes to the heart of the conversation about specking versus investing and collecting, in that my thoughts on Miss Marvel are not, well, I certainly did get some stuff that I thought would see a pop when the series dropped. My bets on Miss Marvel, Riri, Miles, some of those new characters are pretty long bets in my mind,
Right. And
right?
I think, sorry to interrupt, I think
No,
two
go.
of those three are much better bets than one. I think the Miss Marvel is the least strong, just because Ms. Marvel and Captain Marvel and Monica Rambeau and all those characters are
Hmm.
not as popular as Spider-Man or Iron Man. So Ironheart
Oh,
is really I think has a stronger crossover appeal, and Spider-Man, of course, is king of Marvel. So I
yeah.
think, like, I don't, I like Ms. Marvel. I think Ms. Marvel's great. I think the character's great. I think it's wonderful, and I think it's really cool. And the Kamala Khan Ms. Marvel is by far my favorite Ms. Marvel,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
By
Yeah.
far.
Yes,
But
I
like,
agree.
you
I
know,
agree.
but if you go
Well, let
back to
me ask
like
you this. Let
Captain
me
Marvel,
ask.
I'm sorry, Captain Marvel, even who, and I was a Jim Starlin fanboy back in the day,
Mhm.
even those books were, you know,
Yeah.
they made Captain Marvel cool by giving him cancer.
Oh, I hear you. I actually, what's funny? No,
It's
my
like,
my my pushback to that, and maybe this is a different episode. It's funny because I was just talking to somebody else about this. Is actually the Robert Downey Jr. effect on the lens we now see Iron Man through. Iron Man has never been as popular as we like to think Iron Man was, right? Like there are
right.
not. He was never a particularly good selling book. He doesn't have like iconic runs. And actually, like, look, this Miss Marvel trade, the first trade, sold 500,000 copies. I'm
Yeah.
not sure how many years of Iron Man books you have to string together before you get to 500,000 copies of an Iron Man book.
No,
You know,
Iron Man, um,
I mean,
you know,
RDJ did it boosted him up.
they chose Iron Man because they didn't have the rights to the good
Right,
characters, right?
right,
We know
right.
that, right?
Yep.
One of the greatest collecting regrets of my personal life was when I was much, much, much younger. In my
Mm-hmm.
teens, I had a chance to buy Iron Man 1 for 30 or $40, and I said, "Nah,"
Ugh,
because,
yeah.
it's
Yep.
Iron Man kind of thing. But you're right. The character, the actor, the actor playing the character certainly matters.
Yeah. So so stepping away from the individual, so
Sure,
let's
macro
pivot
out.
to, yeah. Let's pivot to our individual approaches.
Mhm,
So to me there's a couple different elements here. The one is, how are you approaching buying and selling for yourself at this moment in relationship to the market turn? And there's a second, and you can answer them connected, or we can have separate conversations, is, does this feel like we are coming back to a sort of the pre-levels before we boomed off, or do we think the floor for some of that we've gone so far up in some of these prices and the stature of comics and the way comics are seen in our country, that the floor is much higher, that wherever we kind of settle out here is still going to be a new high floor? What are your
I
thoughts on those
I
two
think we're gonna
topics?
here's the weird thing. I think we will have a new high floor, but less sales.
That makes sense.
Because, the books went up so much in the last, what was it, 14 months or whatever it was now, 15 months, um, that they've made new high water marks. But now, because people don't have stimulus money, because gas costs $5 a gallon, because the stock market is going down, I think we're going to see less sales.
Mm-hmm.
People are going to be buying less right now,
Mm-hmm.
which oddly makes it a great time to get some steals,
Absolutely.
right?
I
I
mean,
mean,
we're gonna spend some
some,
time talking. No,
yeah.
So let's talk about that, because I agree. Obviously, if you have the ability to be buying right now, and
Hmm.
it is a great time to be buying. Um, However, those resources are, I can't speak for you. I know I can speak for me and my
Well, let
family.
me
The
let me
money
just
I
tell
feel
you.
comfortable throwing is different. So what are you targeting? How are you allocating that?
Well,
You know?
just the first thing I do financially is everything I sell and everything I buy comes out of a separate bank account.
Mhm.
None of the money I earn in my day-to-day life working go is where I buy any of my books from, and it's not where any of my sales go. I
Mhm.
think keeping things separate like that, there's a whole bunch of reasons, tax reasons. It's so much easier to do my taxes every year because I'm selling a fair number of books for the last few years. Um, I think that's important. And that gives me confidence that I'm not spending money I should not be spending.
Mhm.
Um, so, what I am doing currently, as far as buying books, is I am primarily targeting my LCS stores in the region.
Mm.
That's the
Mm.
first place I'm looking.
Your local comic shops.
My local comic shops,
Mhm.
and I live in an area where there's a handful within a 25-minute drive. I live out in the country, right? There's not one right downtown for me. So I go there and I see what's on their wall, or I see what's in their bins. And if there's a book that I want that maybe costs more than I should spend, right? Or it's at the ceiling of
Mhm.
what I should spend,
Mhm.
I pay attention to if it's been there a little while, right? I pay
Mhm.
attention if it's been there for, did it come in this week? Has it been there for a month? Has it been there for 6 weeks? Did the guy just come back from a show and it's still sitting there? And, I will make, we know each other. We're not strangers, right? I do business with these folks anyway. I make an offer, right? And what
Mhm.
I tend to do is I will make a cash offer. And because obviously it's beneficial for them. So
Mhm.
I will look at a book. Oh, look, I just got a Batman 251.
Nice.
One of, it was on the wall. It's really nice shape. It was a certain grade and it was a certain amount of money. And they also, right next to it, had the first appearance in the Silver Age of Scarecrow. What is that, like Batman 178, I think? Right? I
You
think
would
it's
know
one
better than I.
right around there.
Mhm.
And I was like, looking, I said, listen, if I buy the Batman 251 at the price you're asking for it cash, throw in the Batman 178.
Mhm.
Guy thought
Mhm.
about it. Yeah, sure, why not? But those books had been there
Right.
for a month. They had not just come in. So that's where I'm primarily, because he has overhead, or they have overhead,
Of course.
right? They're going to be more eager to make a deal because they have that overhead, and they know the book has not sold for whatever reason in their market. So I look for the books that I want on that are like up there on the wall primarily. That's my number one way of doing things right now. And I
Hmm.
found that I've gotten good deals.
Mm.
You?
Yeah.
What about
So
you?
no, yeah. So certainly the LCS is useful. I'll tell you one of the things that well, a few things. One, I find trading a pretty good time to trade right now
Yep.
because, um, regardless of the speed at which things are moving, like it's going to be harder for me, and your store's going to factor this in as well. So don't get me wrong, you're not going to get dollar for dollar when you're trading, right? We know
Correct.
that going in, but you're certainly going to get more in trading than you would be trying to sell your books to the store. Okay. And as a collector and an investor, I'm always looking to trade up when possible.
Hmm.
It is, as a default setting, get the best book at the best grade you can get over getting everything else, because it'll be easier to fill in those things at other times. And in general, where I can now, I'm being much more selective, just like everybody is. I've passed up on a number of decent books that maybe in a slightly different environment I might have pulled the trigger on, that were tempting. They were books I wanted. Um, but I'd rather hold off on 3 or 4 of those kind of mid-level trigger pulls to make sure I've got the bankroll. Because if you look at a book now, look, I've got a couple of my Ultimate Fallout 4s,
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, those books are not off their high. They're like 40% off their high.
Right.
And, so one thing I would be doing if I was looking right now, that's a kind of book. Look, maybe Miles won't be a thing, but I think Miles is a thing. And I think Miles will be a
Oh yeah.
thing. 20 years, 30 years, Miles will be a thing.
Yeah.
So if you got blown out of the water with some of those Miles prices, maybe revisit. Now, the top of his market, so like the variant, the Ultimate 4 variant, I can never say the artist's name, but that book still sells and hasn't dipped at all. Like that book just blows up, right? Because the people that are swinging for those books, it's just not an issue, right? You're spending that kind of money. I don't have that kind of dough, but you can get some keys that maybe you've been looking at that were, and again, is Hulk 181 gonna exactly be at a discount? Maybe like a smidge, but not really. But it
That's
might be a good time to look for your Hulk 180. You see what I mean? Like
yeah.
you're like definite keys that have definite long-term value, that have had moments where everyone paid attention for a while and we're like, oh right, that key that maybe people have gone to sleep on a little bit. Those books have fallen back into much more reasonable terms.
Yes.
Price levels. So I'll bring in, sorry to get myself off
No,
track
go
there.
for it.
I'll bring in a number of books that I know, and particularly slabs, because the shops love slabs. They look good on the wall. People like whatever. And you get obviously a great premium for them. Slabs, nice condition keys that are, mid minor keys, that if we really correct, like if things really continue for a while here, and they might, this might be a 2-year lull, 3-year lull, right? Certainly has happened before. You might be able to get at half of what they are right now. Whereas that more significant key, maybe it comes down 20%. It's probably not coming down 60, you know? So that's definitely something I'm doing. And yeah, from a selling perspective, like you said, if something catches any heat, I'm posting that thing immediately. I'm not waiting around for a better deal. I'll miss the extra $10 on the sale or whatever that maybe it'll get to make sure I move it out.
Yeah. No, if something starts popping, move it. If it's, particularly if it's copper age on,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
You've been big on bronze keys for a
yeah.
while. You're one of
Yep.
the people that first was saying, as the silver age, obviously golden age went through the roof and silver age has escalated. Talk a little bit about your affection for bronze keys and how you're seeing that market.
Well, I think it's, I think it's bared out pretty, or pardon the pun, I think it's bared out pretty well. About a couple years ago when I really came back to the hobby, I noticed that the bronze stuff just had not appreciated. I mean, obviously Hulk 181, but if you looked at Hulk 180, ASM 129, Marvel Spotlight 5, Tomb of Dracula 10, all those keys, none of them had really shifted. Nova 1, even, none of them had really shifted as you would think. And you could just kind of see the cascade coming. Golden lifts silver, silver will lift bronze, because that's the Bronze Age was the last age of comic books where collecting was not a really big thing yet.
Right.
Once you hit
There were a
copper,
ton of them, in all fairness. There's
there
a
were a
lot of
ton of
bronze
them,
books.
and that there were a ton of them, but people weren't putting them in bags. People weren't slabbing them, right? Once you hit copper, stores might be, the smarter stores would be selling them in the plastic bags, polyurethane bags, right? So bronze is the last stage. So I think, for me, where I started looking year and a half to was all the bronze monster stuff. And so what was that?
Okay, wait, let's pause.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right there. No. That's great. That's great, because this is an education moment. Let's not move past that. Let's talk about why the bronze monster stuff, because I think it's smart. It hits the three. I think it's a smart investment. I think it's a smart collector item. I think it's a smart spec play. Talk to me about the bronze monster stuff and horror stuff, and why that is a play right now.
They're cool. I mean, it's so stupid to say it that simply, but the 20s, if you can find the 20-cent monster stuff, they have value. And I think it goes back to, and I never got into the EC game. I wish I could have. I wish I did, but like the EC comics and all those 50s comics pre-code, I never got into them, but you could see people wanted them. They were a thing. Right.
Yeah.
So what I did was I looked around, and I have an affinity for those monster comics anyway. I was like, okay, you know what? Marvel has them. So let's see, where is Marvel? Well, Werewolf by Night, Tomb of Dracula, those are the big ones. But then there's other ones, Frankenstein and supernatural thrillers and stuff. So now, and you can see it's just bubbling on the horizon. Now the DC stuff is about to start popping in a little bit of a way, right? So House of Secrets, House of Mystery, and the Sandman is going to be one of these things.
You're
right?
speaking my love language here. I am all about these House of Secrets, House of Mystery books.
Right,
I think
and of course Swamp Thing, which is tied into this, and
I featured
and the new Crisis. Sorry, just the new Crisis goes back to the Swamp Thing, which goes back to the monster. Oops, sorry, which goes back to the monsters. I'm getting excited.
No, it's all good.
Stuff. But so those are the books that I think have a niche collector who people are going to like. Cain and Abel, those books for the DC are really good. And the reason I say that is because you saw what happened to the Marvel. Obviously, the Frankenstein and the Living Mummy. And one of the first things I did when I got back in the hobby was I made sure to get a Marvel Premiere 28, which is the Legion of Monsters cover with Morbius and Man-Thing.
I've not been able to get one.
I'll get one off the air. I'll tell you what I flipped mine for. You'll be very upset.
Yeah. No, I just want to, not even for flipping reasons. I just want to own one. I've not been.
I almost bought. I saw a really bad copy at a Comic-Con last week for $35, and I was like, I almost did it just to put it back in my collection, but it was so gnarly. But like those books and that Bronze Age, again, people weren't collecting in the same way. People weren't taking care of the books in the same way.
I had a little bit of fuel there. So a couple thoughts. One, it's House of Secrets, House of Mystery. It's the first Destiny. And I had featured this on my previous episode of kind of like off the radar Sandman keys to look for. All the Endless premiere in the Sandman continuity of the Game and Run.
Yeah.
Except Destiny. His first appearance is in that book. It's got a Neil Adams cover. It's gorgeous. It is not, I mean, it's not nothing, but it's not an expensive book at all. If you want to look at a book that you want to get in on Sandman and get a really cool, like just a cool collector, like swag book, that's a really good book. Things like talking about Frankenstein, as goofy as it could seem, what is it? Is it X-Men 10? What's the with Frankenstein and the X-Men are
But
framed up right next to it?
yeah, I think it's later than that. But
N-
they couldn't call him Frankenstein because of like some weird copyright thing. But
that
yeah.
book is that book is very attainable. Like for early X-Men's, that book is very attainable. So I'd look at that. Also talking about the horror and this thing coming, from a media standpoint, one, grain of salt, but at least with Multiverse of Madness, they're knocking certain doors. It's Disneyified, but the Agatha Harkness series,
Hmm.
they've called it Marvel's Horrorverse. We know they're probably putting Legion of Monsters together, Midnight Suns, the Midnight Suns video
Yep.
game shop. Like, when Marvel starts dropping a bunch of that stuff, they're telling you, look, we're going in this direction. So
Oh yeah.
again, I'm not from a spec thing, but like that water will rise a little bit. But then here's the biggest thing, and this is why I'm sort of setting this up for you on a T.
Mm.
Horror films, monster films, are pretty cyclical.
Hmm.
But when we hit a pocket where we're in them for a while, and we're
Yeah,
sort of due for. I mean, we've had a horror film run a little bit, but like actual like monster films, we're sort of due for a cycle coming up.
that would be great.
I know that's your
I mean,
case.
Universal tried to do it with Tom Cruise and the Mummy, and they were going to do the whole you know, um, Universal Studios down in Orlando. If you've ever been down there, it's a lot of fun. But they are building a fourth park right now, and one of the foundations of that park is going to be Universal Monsters, which so they're going. We're going to have a whole generation of kids going down to Universal, and they're going to be seeing all these rides, and they'll see there's a Creature of Black Lagoon. They're going to build a Frankenstein castle, all this kind of stuff. So I think the monster stuff, the horror stuff, are some great collectibles. Um, let's talk. Can we talk Blade quickly?
Yeah, one little thing, and then I'll toss it back, which
Go
is
for it.
the other thing is a lot of those books were red, like really
Yes.
red.
Yes.
So finding those books in high grade, difficult.
Yeah.
And a lot of them you can find Mark Jewler variants. But
Oh
continue.
yeah, that's a good call. That's
Yeah.
a good call. So we all think Blade is coming,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Marshall
so
Ali.
this is collecting. So this is, like we're trying to talk about the critical difference between investing, collecting, and specking, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you can do two of those when you buy a book instead of just one, you're in a
Correct.
good place,
Correct.
right? So you
Mm-hmm.
don't, I mean, if you're a true pure collector, you're going to get what you're going to get. God bless. But if you're trying to navigate and you want to maybe build your collection and have something that you can flip later, you probably want to at least collect and invest, or collect and spec, or some combination of that holy trio. Okay. So probably Tomb of Dracula 10 is beyond most of our ability
Mm-hmm.
right now, you know,
And holding value.
and
Again,
holding value.
some books,
Yep.
those bronze keys are holding their value. I think
Exact
it's a
Ghost
really
Rider.
important thing to note. We're seeing a lot of drops at all price levels, not at those.
No, the Marvel Spotlight 5, Ghost Rider 1.
Ghost Rider 1, Punisher 1, Punisher, ASM 129, not that it's a horror book, but that era.
That's dipped a little bit, actually, I
I,
think.
I think it set a record this week at 9.4, but anyway,
Oh,
maybe
well,
I
maybe a
misread.
9.4.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a
Or
hard
nine
book to get
two,
in
something like
9.4.
that.
Yep.
Oh yeah. And oh, sorry, let me be clear. I'm talking about on the higher end of the spectrum. If you're
Okay.
getting it for your PC, if you've been waiting for a good time to get a key book for your personal collection and you're looking at a mid grade, yeah, be looking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But there's still a whole bunch of Blade books
Mm-hmm.
that have not really popped significantly yet. So 12, Tomb 12, 13, 17, 25, 58. And we can talk about why each of those have some value. But those are the books, that if they actually do a Blade movie,
I mean,
those,
we know they are, right? I mean, that's
yeah,
not. Well, I guess until we see it. But like we have an
Yeah.
actor. I mean, there's an A-list actor.
They have a
playing.
multi-Oscar winning
Yeah,
actor.
who's already shown up voice wise in a stinger
Yeah.
on the Eternals
Yeah.
film. So
So,
spoiler if you haven't seen the Eternals yet. Whatever. Anyway, carry on. Yeah, so Blade's coming. But see, okay, so here's an interesting thing.
So
I was never.
just to go back.
Oh,
So
do it.
those have collecting value, spec
Yes,
value, and investing value. And if that's really where you want to be to the best of your ability as a purchaser right now.
those are more interesting to me personally as a collector than they are. I'm not saying there isn't room and it couldn't go, but they fall into a category of that's not a bet personally I'm making. That's not a risk I'm taking. Unless I'm trying to fill out a run for me as a collector, right? They might pop, whatever. But like Moon Knight's a really good example. Full disclosure, it's never in on Moon Knight. I never got it. I don't hate the character or anything like that, but like I collect so many things. I never really collected Moonlight other than I love Bill S. And so those early covers, I mean, some of the best covers ever, those Bill S. Moon Knight covers.
Absolutely.
But I did not understand it. And certainly his Werewolf by Night's first appearance has maintained those huge numbers. Almost everything else, Moon Knight's down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not just like, oh, well, when he shows up, it'll pop and the pop didn't work, or whatever. I mean, the thought with Moon Knight is that's an established character. I mean, it's lesser known, but it's the same level of Blade. Like, it's not an A tier. And they got Oscar Isaac. It's not like they got a major actor.
Right, but that's like a 1980, right? Like Moon Knight 1, right? Like Moon Knight's down, but I make you a bet Werewolf by Night 32, 33, 37, Marvel Spotlight 28 and 29 still holding their value.
Yeah. Yes. But that's what I mean. That's what I mean. If you're targeting the bigger books,
Yep.
yeah. But to your Tomb of Dracula Blade ones, I'm saying for the more minor keys, yes, I think there may be some room. And yes, if you want to collect them, go get them when you can afford them. I'm just saying personally, I wouldn't bet that horse to give me big returns, even if undervalued relative to the market.
That's fair.
That's
fair.
Yeah. And again, tastes. Like what you said, trying to get 2 out of the 3 is exactly, I think, spot on. Listen, it sounds dumb, but it's as true as anything is. If you buy what you like, you will not be disappointed because then you will have what
it
you
is
like.
the greatest platitude and the greatest truth of all this stuff.
That's right.
That's
right. So let's step back here, macro. Look, the world's on fire. The serpent of capitalism's eating its tail.
Can we just quickly?
Yeah.
Before, let's talk about buying strategies just a little bit more.
Yeah.
So we talked about trading in at a store. That's a great advice. Don't sell to a store. Trade for credit or a particular book at the very least, right? Because you'll get at least 25% more to your value. Should be expected. Then when you're buying online right now, you can look for buy it now prices, and they might have some good ones, but really be targeting auctions if you're going to be going the old eBay route.
And if you're selling, do not put your book on an auction right now.
No.
Woo! No. The auctions are rough. I would not put any unless like sometimes I'll auction a book where like in this jump where everything went up, where like dollar books are like not even dollar books anymore. Dollar books are $4 books now. You know what I mean? So like if you've got a bunch of books that you would have happily sold as dollar books back in the day and you want to put an auction, and if it gets like $3.29, you feel victorious, great, go ahead and auction it. But if you want a book and you want value, unless you need, if you need it, you need it. If you need the cash, you need the cash. But
sure, of course.
This is managing your inventory to maximize, and you can hold it a little bit. Throw it up there, throw a best offer on there. Best offer has been that honestly, I mean, it sounds so basic, but that's been my best play right now, is getting everything at and earnestly don't if you list like $1 over what people are asking to try to squeeze it, you're screwed right now. List at a fair price, maybe a little under, but give the best offer and be willing to move at a mild discount. You don't have to panic sell, but if people feel like they're getting a little bit of a deal, that's been the majority of my sales recently.
Yeah, no, it's a tough time to sell.
Yeah,
It's a tough time to sell because you're just not going to get real value out of it.
So let's talk about not selling.
Sure.
And this goes back to what. So now I'll go big picture. So there are reasons to think outside of the extenuating factors that sort of the global machine is grinding down a little bit here, more than a little bit. It's not just the U.S. economy. Global economy. I mean, I won't cherry pick countries, but trust me, as bad as it is here, there's a lot of countries dealing with worse. And at this point in this age, we're all interconnected, and the pandemic, and the systems coming out of the pandemic, and Russia and Ukraine, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we know this is happening. Now, I can't tell you if, we'll get through November and we'll see a little bounce and things will recover, whether this is 2 to 3 years, whether we're starting, I don't know. But if I've got a key book, even if I've got money sunk into it that I'd like to have in my pocket, if I don't have to sell it and you've got a key book, don't sell it. Hold on to those books. Don't do it. You want to take a hit on like a spec book that you were hoping, maybe whatever it is. You bought it for 20, you have to sell it for 18 and you eat a couple, whatever. You were hoping it was going to go to 40, it didn't. Whatever. If you got to do it, do it. Who cares? Don't sell those keys. Just don't do it. They're the reason they're keys, especially major keys.
They will always go up.
They just will. We may dip here, but when everything comes back, the high is going to be higher than it was now. So
no, I have a safe deposit box down at the bank with, I don't know, 10 slabs or so in it.
Mm-hmm.
Nope, those aren't going anywhere.
Yeah,
those are, so oddly enough, it's a good time to get things slabbed from that standpoint.
Yeah, that's true. That's a great point.
Right? Because you're not going to want to, the turnaround times are brutal. We know they're brutal. If you have something like, I got an email today from my third-party presser that the 25 books I sent him are now going to CGC to be slabbed. And I sent those to him end of last year. Right. So here we are 6 months later. Now, what did I send to him, Dan? I sent to him a whole bunch of Bronze Age X-Men and Key Silvers stuff that is just going to be mellow. It's not, like I knew, and we talked about this, you and I had a couple books in there and you were like, you're not going to get them back in time. I pulled them, sold them. Thank you. I owe you a dinner.
You're welcome.
So it's a good time to get some stuff slabbed, particularly if the word fantastic or the letter X is involved.
I concur. No, that is an absolute, that is, listen, actually, I'm just highlighting this right now. If you've been watching this far and you take one, that is like the best advice I think we've given here. You are being given a grace period. The need to flip because you're having hot moments is being cooled and extended. It's a great time to take books that you were maybe afraid to be out of your possession because a key moment might happen. Get them in, get them graded, get them slabbed up, get them protected. And then particularly with the Fantastic Four books, with the X books, they're coming. And when they come, it isn't going to be a 6-episode Disney series and done. It's going to be the start of a a decade-long plus whatever arc of time. So get those books protected. And there are some, look, FF keys have really jumped, but there's still plenty to be had. Plenty to be had at reasonable numbers. And I don't know, actually, I was going to say that's true of X-Men, but like, I mean, is there value in pre-94 X-Men? I feel like the only ones were like Polaris and Havoc, and those have jumped. I think Sauron is a slept-on one.
Yeah,
Just
Sauron,
60.
the Living Pharaoh, maybe
Mm.
Polaris at 50.
Because honestly, the
Um,
Claremont era stuff
who killed who
is
42? Who killed Professor X has some,
uh,
but I mean minor. We're not talking a lot here, gang.
number 9? It's the first X-Men vs Avengers. That book actually has dipped a lot, and
I think
I've
it
got a
is
nice copy
9
of that. But
because I
that's
think
one
it's
I'd look at.
11 with Spider-Man in the Avengers run. I
Yeah,
always get those. Yeah.
yeah, I would look at those. So first, those are ones that are definitely down from peaks, and even when peaked, I think we're undervalued relative to what
Yeah.
they represent.
Right. And some of those X-Men books are I think some of those are the Byrne Claremont and the Cockrum Claremont, but more the Byrne Claremont. Like I'm thinking 129, 131, 133, 135. Those books are holding value in a way that's surprising to me. Whereas like
Yeah,
140, 141 are not. I mean,
yeah,
sorry
yeah.
for
Well,
doing
because
the
we've seen
read
it.
speed here, but
Because we've
yeah.
seen it and not. But you, it's interesting. You say 140, 141 or not. That's there. Those are actually I'm glad you said that. Those are the perfect metaphor books for what I'm talking about. The perfect symbolic books, I should say. They're not holding their highs, but they're way up from what they were. If you were, I know because I got them
Right.
I got slabs of them. I got 9/6 of them in
Sweet.
2017, I think. Okay. They're double what they were then. And that's
Hmm.
after they've dropped back. So that's what I kind of mean about like those better books. Like, yeah, they're going to come down and you can get in on them. But keys are keys, icons are
Right.
icons.
And if you can get X-Men 94 through 141 in
Mm-hmm.
a 9.0 or higher, you'll be fine.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
That
Oh, yeah.
that's a really long run of books right
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Yeah.
That I will say specific to X-Men. Here's I think whatever, not financial advice. Here's my spec pie.
Uh-huh.
If you look at everything that Marvel wants to do and everything that is the larger X-Men arc, it makes all the sense in the world to me for Storm to be the face of this X-Men generation. Like really like the face of it. And so obviously, Giant Size X-Men 1, X-Men 94, like they're already the books, but like the Storm Origin one, which I believe is a Juggernaut cover. I forget the number. It's like 102, something like that. Some of the Black Panther Storm storyline stuff. Storm's a character I would be looking at a little bit, just for what
Interesting.
that's worth. So what did I want to hit here? Sorry, just looking at my notes real quick.
No, go for it.
So anything that you are looking at, anything that you think is going to give you any kind of tell one way or the other about market shifting, or you're really like, I'll give you an example. I am really curious to see what happens when Thor drops and what kind of a bump certain books do and don't get. The Gore books are beautiful books, but they're already really pricey. Do they sustain it will be really interesting to me, because I'm wondering how Gore the God Busher, the Necro Sword, Null, all that
Hmm.
stuff maintains. I think is going to be a really excellent indicator of how modern keys with cool cachet hold through this time
Mm.
period. If they actually drop that Hercules is in the film, I'm going to be curious to see what happens with those books. So that's definitely one I'm tracking.
Okay. I'm not as optimistic about those books. I think they will see a bump.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me wrong;
Mm-hmm.
they will see a bump.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's still a ways off, but Black Panther 2
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
the movie that like I'm looking toward to
Mm.
see if that brings back the the
The
prices in a
fever.
way.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I still think, and it's not just the Submariner books, yes, of course, right? But just like the rising tide of that character, I think
Yeah,
is
and
is the one.
Shuri, and I mean Shuri relates to it. I mean, her books are pricey already, and what does that look like, and how do they handle the passing of the mantle? But it is true. You can look at that run of films of Marvel's like a real apex of the kind of like the MCU domination, right?
Yes.
a real crowning achievement, that film, and in the middle of a run of real crowning achievement films. Does the return of that without Chadwick Boseman, does it recapture that spirit and magic and kind of reignite that? I think is a really good point.
Yep. And then,
And then
like,
obviously,
go ahead.
no, well, obviously, I was just going to say, and as we get into Ant-Man and Fantastic Four and things like that, the Kang phenomenon. Like, what do we actually? What does? Yeah. At the end of the day, does Kang do the Thanos thing or not?
Right. And yeah, I mean, I'm looking more toward Strange Academy 1 still.
Oh,
Young Avengers 1 to some degree, lesser than I
yeah,
was maybe 4 months ago.
yeah.
Um,
But see, those are books I'm long on.
Yeah, of course.
Because Strange Academy, what are we, 2024, 2025 before there's payoff?
Probably. But, those are the books from like the recent wave of Something is Killing the Children, which, um,
that'll be fascinating.
that I'm curious. I'm curious about that.
Sandman on Netflix.
Sandman. I'm not sure Netflix has the pull on some
Yeah.
level. Department of Truth, if that gets like some kind of show, I'm a big Department of Truth fan, but that's
right.
I don't think it's going to have the bump that those other ones do. But
yeah, but I less mean the bump of books individually. Like, I want to be clear what I'm saying about the gore stuff. I'm not actually talking like, will those books do well? I'm saying, what are some markers as I'm taking sort of the temperature of the market as a whole? What are some indicators to me of like how, like, those gore books, if they hold after that movie, forget about bump or no bump. But I mean, honestly, like, those are like a couple $100 books now, the first score, right? Will that maintain? I'm not even talking about rising. How much is that just spec built in this moment when you don't have all the kind of flush money in the market propping it up? Is a modern villain that's cool, but a modern villain able to? And I like, that's one of my favorite modern runs is Jason Aaron's Thor run. But can it maintain heat post that bump?
Right. I think what we're really looking at is the macro economy needing to get better. Right.
Of course. Yeah.
That's where we're getting squeezed ultimately.
Yeah.
But with that said, I think some DC keys are affordable. I think they probably have room to go up in a way that some of the Marvel keys don't. And then some of the blue chip Marvel keys, which we've talked a little bit about, if you can afford them, go for them. But they're not, Fantastic Four 52. We were talking about Black Panther. I was,
right.
It's not a cheap book.
It's not a cheap book, but it's come down a lot.
It's come down a lot. That would be
like
one I would, that's one I would be trading for, squirreling away for.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, do you think there's still room in FF 49, 38 and 49? Or you think that's...
Yeah, I think anything Silver Surfer.
I think so too.
I think 48, 49, 50, Silver Surfer 1.
Silver Surfer
4. Yeah, I think 3's
at its peak. I mean, I love that.
I have that already come and gone. Wait. I love 3. I love Mephisto, but that's beautiful.
It's beautiful. Like, that book. That's a good example. That book's going to come up. It's going to come down. It doesn't matter. It's staying in my collection.
Yeah.
So what do I care? I love that book.
48 and 49, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. I have one last little thing I want to wrap up because we didn't spend a lot of time talking to indies. I'm a big lover of like the Kanto series. I know you are a big TMNT guy from back in the day. I don't want to immediately compare Kanto to TMNT, but I will say, like, if you're into those types of all ages books that have appeal, whatever, that's a whole separate topic, but Kanto's way down off its highs, and I think that has the chance to be a fixture in sort of like TV cartoon landscapes and TV shows and all that kind of stuff. I think a lot of those indie books that were super buzzy that still have plenty of potential, those are real excellent buys. Again, make sure you want to own them because none of that stuff's a lot. As the money dries up, the Hollywood money might dry up. So this kind of golden age of everything being greenlit also may dry up. Right. But the potential in some of those books to me is really high, and you can get them way, way, way off highs now.
Yeah, I think that I like the Kanto books. You know, the Ninja Turtles were a 1 in a million kind of lottery
Yeah,
ticket
I'm
kind of
more
thing,
using that as
you know, but it's the indie stuff.
yeah.
I think that's good advice. And you know, it's tough, like, do your own homework. You know, I look at all of the sites. Like, I look at, you know, if you're watching this show, you're probably watching somebody else who does something similar to what
Mhm.
Dan does here really well. Um, but like, use your own head. If you're seeing something on an app pop up saying go buy this, that means, you know, a lot of people are going to be buying that already. You know,
Yeah.
you're, in some respects, you're already half a step behind,
When
if
you
not a
show it
full
up, when it
step.
shows up on the list, that's not your signal to buy. That's your signal to
Exactly,
avoid.
that's your signal to sell if you haven't
Yeah,
already
sell if
listed
you
it,
went. It may be too late to do that,
and it
but
might be
yeah,
too late to do. Yeah.
it might be too late to
So,
do
you
that.
know, we're not trying to be, you know, I enjoy all this stuff. I look at all this stuff. I belong to
Mm.
many of those apps and stuff. But if you know, if you're, you know, like, you can tell, like, if I list a book and suddenly it sells and I have no idea why it sells, most likely that means someone has some other real inside information somewhere that I'm just not privy to. And then I start trying to, like, get the
Track
other
it
stuff
down.
ready to sell that it might be associated with that. And then, like, oh, lo and behold, a week later, a trailer drops or a character is announced, kind of thing.
Right.
Um,
Right on. Well, listen, good conversation, great insight. Thanks. You always bring so much, Josh. I really appreciate it. And it's fun always chatting comic books with you.
always, man.
So summarize, if you can do some buying right now, use this market to buy, but please do so selectively, be thoughtful, do your research. I mean, really, this is advice we could give anytime, but like, if you really do your homework and hone in on some keys, you can get some books at values that maybe you weren't thinking of. And really, it's not about getting the key. It's like getting that, like, just off, that maybe doesn't have heat, right? So it's the Hulk 180, not the 181. It's the whatever. Trading in, Hunter LCS, be active. People are going to be ready to deal. Be ready to take advantage of that. If you're selling, be thoughtful, strategic, and timely. If the moment is there, do it. Don't wait. You're probably going to miss your moment.
And I do like the 2 out of 3, right?
Yeah.
Investing, collecting, and speculating. Hopefully, you're covering 2 out of 3 of those bases, because then you're probably in a stronger place. If you're purely speculating or purely investing, um, that's a tough place to be unless you have, like, real capital behind you.
Real capital. That's right. And look, and we'll hammer it home one more time. If you buy what you like and you get stuck with a book, you have something that you feel really great about owning. So buy what you like. Thanks everybody. I just got confirmation literally while I was on this about the date for the big guest that I'm going to announce. I'm not going to do it now. So next show I will announce it right at the top. But trust me, if you are a fan of the Marvel Netflix shows, you're going to want to hear it. So
Awesome.
see you next show, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.